Welcome to Progressive Independence. I'm Michael Wilk, coming to you from Cleveland, Ohio. Impeachment is the talk of the town in Washington, D.C. Nancy Pelosi has finally opened up an impeachment investigation into Caligula Drumpf, the orange-painted dictator who was elected in 2016 after Democrats blew probably the biggest election in a generation against the most easily beatable candidate in a generation by running one of the most criminally corrupt politicians in a generation. And now they are trying to do it again. In 2016, Hillary Clinton and the Democrat National Committee collaborated to steal the nomination from Bernie Sanders, the Vermont independent who ran as a Democrat in that year, only for Clinton's own criminal corruption to be brought to the forefront as WikiLeaks divulged all manner of criminal activities, everything from her involvement with the overthrow of the Libyan government to her activities in overthrowing the Honduran government and her part in the Ukraine coup of 2014. Well, Joe Biden, the VP at the time, was also in it up to his eyeballs, and also just weeks after the Ukrainian government was overthrown by the Obama regime, Joe Biden managed to pull strings and get his brat Hunter a job with an oil company. But that's not all. And now, of course, because Caligula Drumpf, ever the political opportunist, decided to open up an investigation into Biden's attempts to cover up his son's involvement. And also because Biden went ahead and pulled strings to get the prosecutor investigating his son fired. Now, this is fact. This has actually been reported, not accepted by anyone in the mainstream media, not even really reported, because if this were to come out, it would spell the end of Joe Biden's political career, as it should. So let's go ahead and get right down to the facts. In 2016, Robert Perry, the late editor of the news website Consortium News, reported on the phony corruption excuse for their Ukraine coup. And the exclusive was the United States-backed regime change in Ukraine, launching the new Cold War with Russia in 2014, was rationalized by the need to get rid of corruption in that country, but post-coup officials are busy lining their pockets. Fast forward 3 years, Ray McGovern, on his blog, reveals that if the facts come out, it could spell the end of Joe Biden's career. And I'm going to quote from this. The Joe Biden-friendly establishment media has mounted a full-court press to prove that Biden is, well, not a crook. The stakes are extremely high, Biden is vulnerable, and media players are using to fare thee well the old adage about the best defense being a good offense, which now, of course, is impeachment by the Democrats. The New York Times, Washington Post, and Wall Street Journal are desperately trying to steal the ball and get ahead in the publicity game, but timing is about to run out, and preemptive propaganda is unlikely to snatch victory out of the jaws of defeat. If the facts do come out, and if they are reported, Biden's presidential hopes may suffer a mortal blow. When the corruption in which the former VP and his son Hunter were involved in Ukraine becomes more widely known, the press wants to be in position to show that it's all the fault of Caligula Drumpf and his lawyers for trying to derail Biden's candidacy by exposing him. If past is precedent, the media will largely succeed. The question is whether enough people will nevertheless be able to see through this all too familiar charade. In an interview with the National Interest, Joe Lauria puts this episode in context. It was in February 2014 when Yanukovych was overthrown, and just a few months later, in May, Joe Biden's son and a close friend of John Kerry's stepson, they both joined the board of this Ukrainian gas company, and the name of that was Burisma Holdings, said Joe Loria, editor of Consortium News and a former correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. So just after an American bat coup, you have Joe Biden's son Hunter and this John Kerry family friend joining the board of probably the largest private gas producer in Ukraine. They installed the new government, and as the bounty of this coup, Joe Biden's son personally profited. He would not have gotten that job if Yanukovych was still in power, Loria told the National Interest. And of course, then we bring to yesterday. What isn't mentioned about the Trump-Ukraine scandal? The routine corruption of United States foreign policy. And of course it goes, and this is by Joe Loria. Now, he says right off the bat, Trump was very likely motivated by politics if he indeed without military aid to Ukraine in exchange for Kiev launching an investigation into Democrat frontrunner Joe Biden. Well, he's not really the frontrunner, although he's been anointed such by the corporate media, just as it did to Hillary Clinton, even though that wasn't really the case in 2016. And I think we're going to see a repeat that will put that orange-painted degenerate in the White House for another 4 years, because Democrats refuse to learn. And Joe Loria writes, we know from the leaked early 2014 telephone conversation between Victoria Nuland, then Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs, and Jeffrey Pyatt, then United States Ambassador to Ukraine, that then Vice Dictator Biden played a role in midwifing the United States-backed overthrow of an elected Ukrainian government soon after that conversation. That's the biggest crime in this story that isn't being told, the illegal overthrow of a sovereign government. And of course, Biden then taking advantage of that coup, which he helped orchestrate, to go ahead and get his son Hunter a seat on the board of this company. But it gets worse. When a Ukrainian prosecutor began looking into possible corruption at Burisma, Biden openly admitted at a conference last year that as vice president, he withheld a $1 billion credit line to Ukraine until the government fired the prosecutor. As Biden says himself, it only took 6 hours for it to happen. And here is the proof on YouTube, and I'm going to play that for you.
I remember going over convincing our team, or others, to convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over, for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
So yeah, that's Joe Biden openly bragging that he got the prosecutor fired, which Democrats, again, are attempting to spin, saying that, oh yeah, he was trying to end corruption in the Ukraine. No, he wasn't. He was trying to save his brat, Hunter, and John Kerry's family friend from being investigated. So this leads to another major part of this story not being told. Quoting from Joe Loria, the routine way the United States government conducts foreign policy with bribes, threats, and blackmail. Drumpf may have withheld military aid to seek a probe into Biden, but it is hypocritically being framed by Democrats as an abuse of power out of the ordinary. But it is very much ordinary. Examples abound. The threat of withholding foreign aid was wielded against nations on the United Nations Security Council in 1991 when the United States sought authorization for their first Gulf War. Yemen had the temerity to vote against, and of course, Yemen is being bombed into annihilation by the Saudis with the full backing of the United States. A member of the United States delegation told Yemen's ambassador that's the most expensive vote you ever cast. The United States then cut $70 million in foreign aid to the Middle East's poorest nation, and Saudi Arabia repatriated about 1 million Yemeni workers. The same thing happened before the Second Gulf War in 2003, as revealed by whistleblower Catherine Gunn. Gunn leaked an NSA memo that showed the United States sought help from its British counterpart in signals intelligence to spy on the missions of Security Council members to get leverage over them to influence their vote to authorize the invasion of Iraq. In 2001, the United States threatened the end of military and foreign aid if nations did not conclude bilateral agreements granting immunity to United States soldiers before the International Criminal Court. More recently, the United States has used its muscle against Ecuador, including dangling a $10 billion IMF loan in exchange for the expulsion of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange from its London embassy, and of course, Assange is now languishing in a British high-security prison, his health deteriorating badly, may not even survive the extradition process. And as Joe Loria says, this is how the United States conducts quote-unquote diplomacy. But yeah, this is what happens. The Democrats are hoping that the American public is too stupid to realize what's being done. Joe Biden, criminally corrupt, yet he is the preferred politician to run against Caligula Drumpf for 2020, even though he has displayed behavior that is best described as senility on the debate stage and on the campaign trail. The boy has tons of skeletons in his closet that are being brought out. And this is the boy they want to run against Drumpf. They would rather guarantee that Orange Baboon's re-election than allow someone like Bernie Sanders or Tulsi Gabbard to win the nomination. And they're going to do it. They're going to get away with it. And you and I, ladies and gentlemen, the American people, we're going to be the ones who suffer for it. Not Joe Biden, not Caligula Drumpf. It's going to be us, the American people, and by extension, the rest of the planet. We cannot afford to let this impeachment drama distract away from the very real crimes of Joe Biden and allow him to do in 2020 what Hillary Clinton did in 2016, which is to go on to lose the general election because voters are sick and tired of corrupt Democrats in bed with Wall Street and the military-industrial surveillance establishment screwing us over and over and over to the point where they will happily elect a buffoon like Caligula Drumpf to the presidency just to stick it to that establishment. Now, Drumpf is not a good guy. He has done plenty of things that are impeachable. His use of a Moab munition in Afghanistan, his violation of the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution before even taking office, is ongoing profiting from his private business interests while he is in the office of the presidency. And of course, his illegal attacks on Syria and his efforts to go after Iran and start a war with them at the behest of people like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo. Even though he's gotten rid of these assholes, well, not Pompeo because he's still in the Secretary of State's office, but Drumpf is not a smart guy, but he's also not a complete imbecile because he knows that if he gets railroaded into starting a war, that's going to drive his popularity down even further. But he's also just shrewd enough to know that even if Biden manages to succeed in getting all this swept under the rug, and the Democrats and their allies in the corporate media manage to cover up all this stuff, the damage is already done. And that boy is going to get another 4 years in office to screw everything up. We cannot let that happen. I want you to go ahead and spread the news about this, get people talking about it, demand that the media cover the actual corruption going on here, which is Joe Biden's criminality, because you're not going to stop one criminally corrupt politician with another. It's just not going to happen. They're going to go ahead and screw this up again. Don't let them. If you like what you've heard and you want to hear more, please hit the bell icon and the subscribe button to receive notifications whenever I upload new content. If you want to help support this channel, please head over to our Patreon or Subscribestar page, which will be posted in the next video. Until next time, this is Michael Wilk for Progressive Independence saying take care, good night, and good luck.